I work at the Darabont County Archives, Part 5, written by JenniKinoShimatta. Let's take a step back from the quasi-cosmic ramifications of the Great Mouser. Let's talk about UFOs today. I don't think that I'm exaggerating when I say that Darabont County is the Bridgewater Triangle of Vermont. It seemingly has everything that a budding paranormal investigator would want. All unverifiable, of course. It has UFOs, Bigfoots, Wendigos, skinwalkers, disappearances, murders, ghosts, giant birds, sea serpents. The list just goes on and on. I've only touched on some of the things that I've discovered in the archives, and that will continue. But I'm learning so much fascinating gossip from Miss Angie and Tall Jim that it would be a disservice to everyone if I didn't talk about some of the weirder things that they've said. So, the child disappearances and the Witch of Precipice Bay started me down this rabbit hole. But along the way, I've picked up Wendigo, Gracklins, cats, and a whole bucket load of Abenaki myths. Tall Jim has been indispensable in giving me some background that I couldn't get from Miss Angie in the archives. But here's some interesting facts about UFO sightings in the area. From 1983 to 1999, over 90% of the UFO sightings in Vermont came from Darabont County. On the evening of September 2nd, 1988, there was a rash of sightings of strange lights in the sky. From Precipice Bay all the way down to New Stickney. 2 sets of 3 lights in a triangular pattern danced across the sky back and forth for over 4 hours. The Precipice Bay Beacon, Hollows Gazette, Fraser Lake Crier, and the Stickney Times reported that the sightings stretched as far north as Montreal and as far south as Berlin and Montpellier. ABC, NBC, and even CBC in Montreal carried stories the next morning of the lights and some people reporting burned fields and scorched forests. There were about 20 cases of people with mysterious skin lesions and burns from hospitals across the area. Golden Bough Medical Center reported 5 of those cases, and the Stickney Times reported that the victims showed signs of radiation burns. But the story was immediately redacted in the evening edition. On September 3rd, CBC Montreal reported the cause of the lights was a test flight of U.S. military assets from Burlington Air National Guard Base. But that story was never reported by any of the local papers or news stations in the U.S. On the morning of June 6th, 1985, a massive aerial explosion shattered windows in Petersham, and at least 3 people from Attituck were admitted to the Golden Boughs Memorial Hospital for burst eardrums. No one saw anything, even though the incident occurred during the morning commute. Then, around 7 p.m. on November 1st, 1991, residents of Lynchburg and Chatham called the sheriff's office in Morgan Hollows to report a suspected forest fire behind Mount Warren. They unanimously reported a red glow pulsating and flickering on the other side of the mountains with a faint scent of smoke. Authorities called up to Skydales on the side and Fraser Lake on the bottom of the mountain. Neither town could find any indication of fire, but they alerted the sheriff's department of a possible forest fire on the other side of the mountain. They dispatched a car to Chatham, and the deputies reported the same phenomena. Abruptly, all the sightings stopped at 11:48 p.m., but the burning smell lingered for 2 days afterwards. Finally, at 1:17 p.m. on August 2nd, 1998, Brahms was a witness to a streak of burning light cascading across the sky. Witnesses stated that it was like a dirt clod rolling along the road. As it moved, it was slowly whittling away as pieces broke off and scattered in its wake. Golden Boughs and Morgan Hollows reported the same sight, and it continued for 23 minutes before disappearing completely. At 4:58 p.m. that same day, a minor tremor registering a seismic magnitude of 2.6 shook the area encapsulating Brahms, The Hollows, Petersham, Golden Bowls, and Attatuck, cracking windows and splintering the foundation of the Darabont County Sheriff's Station. No other towns or cities reported the phenomena in the sky. These are just some of the verifiable sightings that I could dig up in the newspaper morgue. Unreported or unpublished sightings abound in the area. From 1989 through 1991, there were an estimated average of 3 sightings per week called into the sheriff's department. This area is clearly a hotspot for UFOs in the present. But Tall Jim explained that things have always been this way. I told you that the one sites were the reason that we fear the tall men, but it wasn't always so. Long before the cult and long before the white men came across the lake, local tribes revered the tall men. But they also feared them under the belief that great evil slept under the mountains. This story has no time period. It exists between the times when animal and human were indistinct. But there was a great calamity which threatened to sunder our world. Gitchiniwask, the Great Spirit, created the world and all the spirits. From these spirits sprang Gluskaba, who taught the people of the land the ways of farming and hunting and how to shape the world. Some stories include an evil brother named Malsumus, who sought only to undo what Gitchiniwaska created. But that's not part of the story I heard, so I'm going to ignore it. Additionally, there was another, Ojihoso, or the man who came from nothing, who created the mountains and Lake Champlain by dragging his legless body across the earth. For a time, it was only these two beings and all the creatures of nature who they used to control the winds, water, etc. What's important for this story is that these two powerful beings existed and created the world that we know. You see, our myths hold 3 distinct periods: the Ancient Age, the Golden Age, and the Present Age. Roughly speaking, the Ancient Age is akin to your Garden of Eden, where everything lived in harmony, but the spirits controlled all the aspects of the world. The Golden Age is where man and animal began to separate as man's control over the environment grew. And the Present Age is where man is man and not animal at all through knowledge bestowed upon him by Gluskaba. This story takes place at the end of the Golden Age and at the very beginning of the present. One day, a fiery bird approached from the sky from another place. We've understood this to mean space. It approached with a deafening roar that snapped trees and killed countless animals and humans. When I was little, my mother called it Nautabakata, or midnight, since it ends one age and begins the next. But lately, some people have been calling it Asquidadid, which isn't any word that I know, but it somehow became known as a fiery bird. I don't know where it came from, but I'm going to continue using Nautabakata as I tell this story. The world turned and ate and grew under the tutelage of Gluskaba for an untold time. The animals and humans lived in harmony and balance with many wondrous things created by the power of Gitchiniwaska. However, as the age grew old and the stars turned in the sky, the Great Silence saw fit to make itself known once more. With the crash of 1,000 thunderstorms, a great bird, wreathed in fire, roared into existence at the border of land and sky. Not born from Gitchiniwaska or Gluskaba, indeed not born of anything more or less than the end of all things, it burned the sky and singed the earth. The bird sat high in the sky for 20 days and 20 nights, causing even the sun and the moon to hide in fear, until finally, Gluskaba flew up to speak with it. "Why have you come to kill the earth and trees?" he asked. "I have come to sunder all beneath me and spread my wings across the world," it replied, knowing that this would mean the end of all men and animals, and the world alike. Gluskaba begged the fiery bird to pass in peace, to no avail. "I will smite this land in the dead of night 3 days from today," the bird warned him before Gluskaba retreated to the ground. Knowing that even he could not prevent such a disaster alone, Gluskaba sought out Oyasu, who had become a stone after creating Lake Champlain. "Wise Oyasu, I wish to speak to you. Will you talk?" The stone did not answer. "The fiery bird in the sky threatens this lake and everything that you have created. I need your help." At this, the stone shrugged and the legless Oyasu waded across the lake to where Gluskaba was standing on the shore. "Why do you wake me just as I was falling asleep? I care not for the dangers of the firebird. My mountains and lake will survive long after we are both gone. The firebird will not allow your works to survive. It will destroy all it can touch and beyond. Already it has burned the land and it flies nearer each day." Oihozo, who was impatient as always, said, "If you help me, you must give me your tobacco so that I may pass the time and look upon my lake until the great silence." An accord was made over the day, and the two quickly made a plan. At the darkest hour of night on the third day, Nowittabakad landed on the earth. Its wings scorched and scarred the ground. Fire burned all the animals and men in the area to ash, and its cries tore the sky. It gleefully cut the edges of Lake Champlain with the tip of its wings and sundered the mountains to the north into dust. It laughed as it destroyed and reveled in the power to undo everything that Gichinawasca and Gluskaba had built. Suddenly, a great rumbling began all around. Confused, Nowittabakad ceased its destruction and put its head to the ground to hear the cause of this noise. No sooner had it laid flat against the blackened earth than the trap was sprung, and miles of earth on either side rose up to swallow the Deathbringer. Confused and surprised, frightened, it pushed off the ground and took flight, shattering the ground under its feet. But as powerful and fast as fire is, it could not move fast enough, for as it reached the sky, the very ground on either side rose up and swallowed it whole. The earth quaked and shuddered as the fiery bird attempted to escape, but the rock was too thick and the space too small for it to do more than just turn around. Without the use of its powerful wings, it was trapped until, like all fire, it exhausted itself and turned to cinders. Silence lay upon the land for 1 day and 1 night before Gluskaba and Oihozo were satisfied that the threat was over. The pair then looked upon their work, a long line of tall mountains cutting across the area that stretched from Lake Champlain down to the dark forests of the south. "I am tired," said Oihozo. "I want to relax in my lake and go to sleep. Will you make sure that I get my tobacco?" "Of course," replied Gluskaba. "I will have it brought to your rock so you need not move again. I am also tired, but this beast is not truly dead. Just as burned wood becomes charcoal, so too can its ashes cause havoc. I will watch over it and tell you if it returns." Oihoso yawned and returned to his lake, entombing himself into the stone to gaze upon his work, while Gluskaba whispered to the new mountains. His breath brought the stone to life. "You who have swallowed the calamity must hold fast and guard your prison. Our age is ending, and so I must travel far, but you will remain and weather but never disappear, entombing forever the destructive adversary for the survival of the world. This sacred task I bestow upon you, tall men of stone, until the great silence prevails and the stars go out. If the fiery Deathbringer awakes from its slumber deep within you, you must call me back, and I will protect this land again." The tall men of stone accepted the appointment gladly, and Gluskaba left the land to search for answers to unfathomable questions. The mountains still remain on guard against the restorations of Noatbakad, and if it were to break free, we know that Gluskaba would return. So, the tall men were guardians of some great evil, an evil that Tall Jim believes was a meteor. Or perhaps something stranger if all of these stories about UFOs aren't true. I can't find any evidence to substantiate the one-site cult or their massacre. But all oral history has some basis in fact, and the details of the story don't point towards it being created as a warning like Grimm's fairy tales. Tall Jim believes that there's some truth to the story since variations of it exist not only within his tribe, but also among the Micmac and Wampanoag tribes of the area. I'm inclined to believe him. I mean, is that story any weirder than anything else that I've discovered already? But what if there's a connection between the story of Noatbakad, the undying bird, and the unknown god of the one-sites? Tall Jim says that the Abenaki have always told stories about UFOs or strangely moving stars. The screaming, burning heads streaking across the sky. Yeah, those could be meteors, but Jim says that some versions of the story include giant flying heads that shot blinding lights from their mouths and used burning tongues to swallow people. It's just a hop, a skip, and a jump from deafening flying heads to UFOs. So we have some sort of ancient precedent for meteors or UFOs in the area. A lot of Native American folklore surrounding odd colors and shapes in the sky, and a host of sightings in the present. Well, for those of you questioning if there might be something about UFOs in the archives, yes, there are reports dating back to the mid-1700s. Now, some of these are mere speculation. First, as I stated before, it's hard to date some of the archives because most of the people at the time didn't date IOUs and payment receipts. Second, some of these sightings smack of the kind of UFO eyewitness accounts that you would find on Ancient Aliens. Anyway, here's what I could find. An undated grain report, presumably from the 1700s, reading, "Falling stars in the middle of the day set the wood ablaze." And an undated constabulary report that was also presumably from the 1700s, reads, "Loud explosions overhead shattering windows in farmhouses across the bay. Small fires cropping up in the southern woods." And a farmer's journal dated from 1768, translated from French by the MILF, reads, "Loud ringing in the mountains caused goats to run away, pigs bled from ears, dogs locked in the barn. Bright flashes in the sky for hours afterwards." There's also a British watch log from Fort Ticonderoga, dated February 3rd, 1775. It reads, "Explosions above the forest, loud noises like artillery shells overhead. General quarters called. Alert raised. No sign of perpetrators. Alert rescinded. Sky alive with shooting stars. And there's an undated Crown Point merchant log which reads, glowing in the forest like fires, it smelled like smoke. Went a different route south. Artillery fire from fort, then I fled into forest. And an undated Continental Army log reads, shooting stars overhead all night, explosions during the day. What madness are the redcoats plotting? No contacts for 3 days. Forest fire flushing animals through the camp. Dinner was good. And a British personal diary dated May 23rd, 1796. Leaving Dutchman finally. Glad to see the back of this godforsaken place. Screaming stars kept the garrison up all night. And finally, an undated surveyor's report that reads, eager to return to Charlotte, presumably the town of Charlotte. Strange things happen in the north. The captain, Barnes, warned us not to pay it no mind, but the area stinks with smoke, but no fire. Cannons fire all night and the moon never rises. I haven't made it through the strata of documents dealing with the period of time around the War of 1812. So this is all that I was able to glean from what's already been sorted. I did visit the newspaper morgue though, and I was able to find, with the excellent assistance of Francis Berry, the archivist, many newspaper reports of the same phenomena from 1900 to the present. Sources in the later articles post-1940 frequently suggest that deposits of swamp gas and methane are the causes of the glowing lights and spontaneous fires, but who really believes that crap? So we've gone down a rabbit hole here, and I'm sorry if I didn't clear up any answers. I've got a couple of friends coming up after term ends down in Castleton, and we're going to explore the area since Steve and his group have graciously offered to show us around. So I may not be able to update this next week, but we'll see. I've still got a lot of work left to do before then, so I'll be signing off for now.